voting on ballot 1, which we've just seen, represents a clear decision that the members seek to change the status quo. And to be clear, if the Oireachtas was to act on this initial recommendation, a constitutional referendum would be required. I want to make that clear. But the result is a mandate for the Assembly to move forward with the formation of our recommendations for the Houses of the Oireachtas. Ballot 2, which I'm discussing now, will look at the legal nature of the desired change. The proposed text of draft Ballot 2, as prepared by myself and the Secretariat, again with the assistance of the Expert Advisory Group and the input of the Steering Group, is on the screen behind me. You'll see it now. The proposed wording on the question on this ballot reads, do you think Article 40.3.3 should be repealed, i.e. deleted and not replaced, or replaced or amended? And the members have 3 voting options before them, and these are now presented on the screen. Option 1 is that Article 40.3.3 should be repealed. We're back in business, thankfully, and you'll recollect that when we stopped, I was dealing with draft ballot paper 2, and I was going through the options on the ballot paper. And option 1 is Article 40.3.3 should be repealed, i.e. deleted and not replaced. Option 2 is Article 43.3 should be replaced or amended. And then the third option is prefer not to state an opinion. And I'm going to deal with each of those options in turn, starting with option 1. Option 1, repeal, would involve the deletion of Article 40.3.3 from the Constitution. The text would be deleted in full from the Constitution. And at our last meeting, at the last weekend meeting, Brian Murray, Senior Counsel, outlined the potential consequences of repeal. In advance of this meeting, we encouraged the members to reread Brian's paper, and a copy of it has been included in the briefing packs, and you now have the correct copy. But in any event, the important point is that it cannot be said with certainty which consequence would prevail if Article 40.3.3 was simply repealed. And Brian identified 3 possible consequences, and indeed I think it's fair to say there could be more. And they were, first, that the form of abortion legislation would exclusively be a matter for the Oireachtas. The second, that pre-1983 constitutional, the pre-1983 constitutional position would revive, including any implied rights of the unborn under the Constitution before 1983. And thirdly, that the rights of a pregnant woman to privacy, to bodily integrity, and to autonomy would prevail over many countervailing circumstances, including any rights of the unborn. There are 3 possible consequences that were identified. And Brian indicated that in his opinion, the consequence which would be most likely to prevail was the first consequence, that legislation would be exclusively a matter for the Oireachtas. But what we feel should be brought to your attention is that the position is not absolutely certain. So that the implications of a recommendation from the Assembly for the simple repeal of Article 40.3.3 would be uncertain. If option 1 is selected, the citizens would then go on to vote on ballot 4A. Ballot 4A would provide recommendations of the Assembly to the Oireachtas about the reasons, if any, for which termination of pregnancy should be lawful in Ireland, as well as any gestational limits that should apply. So the Assembly would be giving their views to the Oireachtas. As simple as that. The information would be supplied under under Ballot 4A. Now going on to option 2, and that's to replace or amend. It would leave open the potential for the Constitution to continue to address the right to life of the unborn and or termination of pregnancy, either exclusively or in conjunction with legislation. This type of change could be done in a number of different ways. For example, an entirely new provision could replace what is already there, that is Article 40.3.3, or alternatively, an amendment could change the wording of the existing text. The text of a replacement provision or amendment could be drafted in a multitude of ways to provide for a range of circumstances and issues. The citizens must recall that it is not the role of the Assembly to draft or suggest replacement provision, but rather to provide recommendations. At this point, we are considering the substance or text of a replacement. At this point, we are not considering the substance or text of a replacement provision or amendment. A replacement provision or amendment to the Constitution could only be subsequently amended, that is to say, altered or changed, by the people in a referendum. It is important to note that voting for either option 1 or option 2 in draft ballot 2 may result in an outcome that allows for either liberalisation of the current legal regulation of termination of pregnancies in Ireland, or alternatively, an outcome which results in the rights of the unborn being given greater protection. So both scenarios are possible. And this is because both legislation enacted in consequence of repeal or, and I want to stress this, depending on its terms, a provision replacing or amending Article 40.3.3 in the Constitution could have either effect. Now, the third option, the final voting option, that's prefer not to state an opinion. This is on the draft ballot paper, as it is important that those who voted in favour of retention of Article 40.3.3 in ballot 1 are not forced by the ballot paper into specifying how the change will be implemented. They are, of course, free to do so, regardless of how they voted in ballot 1, but they are not required to do so, nor to abstain to avoid doing so. Instead, they can select the option, prefer not to state an opinion. This option might also be selected for a variety of reasons by citizens who voted against the retention of Article 40.3.3 in its current form in ballot 1. Now, I'm just going to briefly refer to the presentation of the results. A sample results sheet for this ballot is provided on the screen behind me. Once again, it will specify the number of citizens eligible to vote and the number of citizens who voted. The results will provide details of the number of votes cast in respect of option 1, option 2, and prefer not to state an option. However, for the avoidance of doubt, a majority will be determined by reference to the total votes cast in favour of both option 1 and option 2. Before we go on to the next step, I just want to mention one thing arising from the result of ballot 1. I'm told, you will recollect that the members present who voted numbered 91, and I'm told that another member will be here in the afternoon and will want to vote on the remaining ballots. And what I propose at this stage is asking the members whether they have any objection to that, And if they have no objection, I would like to, in other words, no objection to the member who's not here at the moment joining in. If they have no objection, I'd like them to put up their hands now. So you have no objection. That's very good, very good. All right. We're now going to go into private session, and this will last for, I think it's 20 minutes actually, but yeah, until 10:01, and then we'll have the feedback. So bear in mind what I said this morning in the private session about the roundtable discussion and all of that. And if you have questions, write them down and make them available to the Secretariat as soon as possible. Very good. What time? 1:10 we'll resume.